We'll give it just another 30 seconds or so before we get started. All right, well, hello and welcome to the Circular Bioeconomy Systems Member Hour series. Today's talk is on challenges of the 21st century and engineering leadership. And we have Mike McMeekin with us today. My name is Alicia Modenbach and I will be your host. As a background, ASABE member hours were started in 2021 as a mechanism for our members to learn, connect, and grow. In a few minutes, we will get things rolling, but first, some quick session ground rules and speaker introductions. For today's hour, a few general ground rules. Please keep your audio on mute during the presentation. If you have any questions, you can place them in the chat during the presentation, and we will also be opening up for verbal questions during the question and answer segment at the end. And finally, this meeting will be recorded and available for later viewing on the ASABE website. So today we'll be hearing from Mike McMeekin. Mike is one of the founders of Engineering Change Lab USA. It's a nonprofit focused on the future of engineering and fostering change in engineering that will increase its contributions in support of a more resilient society. He became ECL's first president and executive director in 2019. So Mike served as president of Lamp Rynearson, an engineering landscape architecture and surveying firm headquartered in Omaha, Nebraska. Following his tenure as president, he served as chairman of the board and senior advisor from 2017 to 2021. He has over 45 years of engineering experience and has played a leadership role in numerous signature projects in the Omaha area. Mike is a graduate of the American Council of Engineering Companies Senior Executives Institute, an advanced management, leadership, and public policy training program for current and emerging leaders of engineering and architectural firms. So I'm excited to spend the next hour hearing from you, Mike, and your work with ECL. So please join me in welcoming Mike.
Thank you, Alicia, and I'll share my screen and then give me just a second to arrange things. Okay. There we go. Well, thank you again, Alicia, for the opportunity to present this discussion regarding the challenges of the 21st century and the role of leadership from the engineering community in addressing those challenges. As you will learn in this presentation, Engineering Change Lab is about the future of engineering and engineering's role in society and our impact on people. We believe that this focus on contributing more to society and in our communities is the key to changing the public's perception of the engineering community, to increasing diversity in the engineering community, and to increasing the value that we provide through our work. We are hoping to inspire leaders of change. So I want to warn you in advance, there's some interactive parts to the presentation where I'm going to ask for your input. So just be alert for that, and your contributions can really add to this discussion. So to start, let's take a brief look at where our world is headed. We live in a world that's facing an unprecedented wave of disruptive technological change that's referred to as the fourth industrial revolution. We're still trying to answer the question on the slide. Will we end up like the world of the Terminator or like the world of Star Trek? Will technology shape the future, or will humans shape technology in our best interests? The current discussions around AI are certainly an example of this discussion of technology that we're still engaged in. We also live in a world of environmental imperatives that represent significant existential challenges: climate change, biodiversity loss, population growth, and urbanization. Those two trends are placing strain on urban infrastructure and creating the need for increasing food production. Waste, particularly plastics waste. These challenges all threaten our natural resources and the incalculable value that the natural world provides us. And the need for a more equitable society is another of the challenges we face. So where does the engineering community stand during this time of rapid, unprecedented technological changes combined with major environmental and societal challenges? This is the question that drew me to Engineering Change Lab. So this is what the general public thinks, according to the most recent data available from the National Academy of Engineering. When you look toward the bottom rows on this slide, you can see that the public does not seem to be looking to the engineering community for leadership. Well, I believe, and the stakeholders of Engineering Change Lab believe, that the engineering community should be at the forefront of addressing all those challenges we face. So here's the interactive part to start with. I would like to get your perspective on the current state of the engineering community. So consider these questions that are on the slide. What are the stories you tell when you're talking about the current state of the engineering community? What are you hopeful about? And then what is most troubling to you? I'll pause for just a couple seconds and you can think about that and put your thoughts into the chat. And as we go on, I'll try to keep up with the chat, but if I don't, we can certainly come back at the end. So think about these questions. Well, let me give you some food for thought. One of the interesting and informing aspects of our work in Engineering Change Lab are the perspectives that we hear from our stakeholders regarding the future. And obviously, we hear perspectives of both hope and concern. On the hopeful side, we hear a groundswell of interest in positively impacting the future. The belief that engineering will play a vital role in solving future challenges. We hear about the promise of those technological advances, and we hear an increasing interest in sustainable design. We also, of course, hear significant perspectives of concern. And as you might guess from an audience of primarily engineers, the perspectives of concern way outnumber the perspectives of hope. So we hear about the lack of diversity in engineering, the fact that we are missing out on the talent and skills of over half the population who don't even consider engineering as a career. We hear about fragmentation, particularly on the basis of discipline in the engineering community. Concern about our ability to attract the best and the brightest. Commoditization, and for those of you in the private sector, I'm sure that will ring true. The fact that a lot of the time we are hired on the basis of our price and not on the basis of the quality of our work or our experience. The trend toward short-term project-focused thinking without a broader, longer-term perspective. We hear about the potential unintended harmful impacts from technologies. We hear about threats to licensure, particularly as certain softwares are developed in unlicensed industries. We hear of a loss of recognition as leaders in public policy. And then finally, the ties that exist between engineering and social justice. And thanks to Maury Sauls for his hopeful perspective on the success stories around ag and biotech implementation. Maury is the one who has connected me with ASABE. So Maury, glad to have you on the call today. Yeah, not reaching the leaders who can impact that rate of change. That's a very good point. And I think that's related to that idea of being a leader in terms of public policy is where that plays out frequently. Oh, feel free to go ahead and enter any other thoughts you have. But as this uncertain future unfolds, maintaining the status quo is not an option for the engineering community. And this need for change and adaptation is the imperative that has driven the formation of Engineering Change Lab. The idea to form our group was conceived in 2016 by a small group of leaders within the American Council of Engineering Companies. In 2017, we adopted the concept of operating as a social change lab that convenes individuals from across the engineering community to share perspectives and provoke new ways of thinking about the future. That's where the word lab comes from in our title. It's a social change lab concept. And in 2019, we formally organized as a 501c3 nonprofit. We believe that to help society successfully confront the challenges of the future, the engineering community must contribute at higher levels. Engineering Change Lab can serve as a catalyst for this change, and hence our purpose statement to contribute to a resilient, thriving world by helping the engineering community reach its highest potential on behalf of society. We fulfill that purpose by convening change agents from across the engineering community at our educational summits. We have now held 17 of those summits over the last 6 years. Each summit is a deep dive into an issue that will impact the future of engineering. The topics address important internal issues within the engineering community, along with topics that are focused on our role in society. The summits include a combination of learning from thought leaders, along with group exercises and dialogue. We hope the outcome of our summits to inspire those who take part to become change leaders in their sector of the engineering community and to find avenues for action. This is the current list of topics that we have focused on, and the list continues to grow. Today, I'd like to focus on several of these topics, and then I'll wrap up by summarizing our discussion of the circular economy, which I know is a major focus area for ASABE. Well, to start, let's look at emerging technologies. And these include things like AI, machine learning, the Internet of Things, augmented reality, virtual reality, robotics, big data, digital twins, high-tech construction. We in the engineering community, as both creators and implementers of technology, are woven into the entanglement between emerging technologies and the social and environmental systems that technologies are part of. A major part of our focus on emerging technologies has been on ensuring the ethical use of those technologies. At our summits, we've learned of two important examples of initiatives that are supporting the ethical use of technology. Both of these examples are founded on the concept of macro ethics, the idea that we need to expand our view of engineering ethics to include a much broader view of the impacts of our work. One of these examples is the Ethically Aligned Design Initiative of IEEE, the electrical engineers. The mission of Ethically Aligned Design is to ensure that every stakeholder involved in the development of autonomous and intelligent systems prioritizes a set of design principles. Those principles include the respect for human rights in the creation and operation of technologies, human well-being as the primary reason, the primary driver for the development of technologies, data agency, empowering individuals with access to their data and control of their identity. Providing evidence of the effectiveness of these systems, transparency regarding the way systems make decisions, unambiguous accountability regarding how systems work, awareness of the risks and potential misuses, and ensuring the competence of the creators of these systems. Think about the recent technology arms race around AI applications like ChatGPT. Think about if these principles had been applied to these new AI technologies. Would we be seeing a different approach to how the technologies were released to the public? I think these ideas, these principles can apply to the development and application of emerging technologies in other engineering disciplines. Yeah, the question from Jim Dooley. Yeah, I don't know that that's the, maybe we need to look at that diagram, Jim. The idea was meant to portray that we're part of this web, this overlap between the engineering behind technologies and the people and the communities and the environment that are all impacted. So that's a good thought. Okay, the second example comes from Engineering Change Lab Canada and their Technological Stewardship Initiative. The objective for the TS initiative is to shift the culture of engineering and broaden our perspective about the potential impacts of our work, and thereby bend the arc of technology towards greater good. The initiative is based on a broad definition of technology as basically everything we do to shape our environment. Technological stewardship is founded on three core commitments: advanced understanding of our relationship with technology, which includes instilling the ability to question the creation and application of technology. By that, I mean considering should we build it alongside can we build it. Secondly, there's deliberating values. Understanding that values, personal values, organizational values, play a role in our work and building the capacity to look for the both and opportunities when we encounter competing values. And then there's practicing new behaviors in our work, such as seeking purpose or positive outcomes, taking responsibility for all impacts, expanding inclusion into who is involved in decision-making, and working to regenerate social and environmental systems, not just minimize damages. Engineering Change Lab Canada began the implementation of their Tech Stewardship Practice Program in engineering colleges across Canada. They are also seeing interest from other disciplines in universities, such as business schools, and they are now expanding the program into engineering businesses and other types of engineering organizations. I encourage you to check it out, or I encourage you to check it out. So foremost among the environmental challenges we face is climate change. Multiple engineering organizations, including the National Academy, ASABE, many others, have included addressing climate change as one of the engineering challenges of the 21st century. The stakeholders of Engineering Change Lab agree with the need for the engineering community to do more. At one of our summits in 2021, we looked in detail at the role of the engineering community in addressing climate change. The participants in that summit wanted to continue the discussion and find a way for Engineering Change Lab to be a catalyst for change in this area. So we noted that while lots of engineers and engineering organizations are addressing climate change in their work, there's not an overarching cross-disciplinary statement from the engineering community that clearly commits to our roles and responsibilities. Our response was to develop a purpose statement for the engineering community with respect to climate change. Multiple organizations were involved in the drafting of our statement. Let me quickly review the elements. The first paragraph is shown on the slide. This paragraph is intended to capture all the important elements of the statement: the scientific consensus around climate change, the urgency to act, focus on both reducing emissions and adaptation, and the challenge to the engineering community. The second paragraph summarizes the latest scientific evidence with respect to global temperatures, greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere, and the other indicators of climate change. This paragraph highlights the need for leadership from the engineering community and the need to expand our view of our professional responsibility to include a greater focus on climate change in our work. Then we focus on all the areas of action that are needed and that are possible from engineering: educating the public, engaging early stage professionals who place high importance on this issue, advocating for effective public policies, unleashing innovation and entrepreneurship, an absolute requirement if we're going to meet the climate change goals that we need to meet and that are being set. Championing justice, equity, diversity, inclusivity in climate change strategies. Focusing on affordability, sustainability, and reliability as we transition our energy systems, and collaborating with others, with other engineering disciplines, with scientists, public policymakers, and the stakeholders who are impacted by our decisions. I think the ASABE Circular Economy Initiative touches on several of these areas of action. Finally, in the closing paragraph of our statement, we re-emphasize that urgency to act now and go beyond our traditional roles. We believe the statement is concise, scientifically accurate, action-oriented, and hopefully it's inspirational. These are some of the organizations that have signed on in support of our statement. The list includes private sector firms and some significant organizations within the engineering community, including ASABE, who for some reason, including ASABE, the National Society of Professional Engineers, Engineers Without Borders, the Nature Conservancy, and others. Another product of our climate change summit was this map of the future. On the bottom of the map in the colors are the areas of action that I described earlier, starting with accepting responsibility and committing to a vision. On the left-hand side are some significant high leverage actions or activities that support the general areas of action on the bottom. Well, the map also includes a box on the right titled Overcoming Inertia and Points of Resistance. Any change initiative, such as changing engineering practice to place more emphasis on reducing carbon and addressing climate change, is bound to meet resistance. I'd like to get a little audience discussion and participation around this aspect of the climate change challenge. So here's a couple of questions I'd like you to think about. What is the most significant point of resistance that could prevent or slow down your efforts to address climate change or to incorporate circular economy principles in your work? What are those points of resistance? And what are the strategies that could be implemented that would overcome this resistance? So I'd invite you all, if you would, to think about this and put your thoughts in the chat again. And I'll pause for just a minute. Maury had mentioned one earlier, convincing decision makers of the need for change. Thanks for those two comments. The perception that it could lead to loss of economic growth, great point. And that, I think, is the skill that we all need to develop around really comprehensive analyses of life cycle cost and benefits that go beyond the areas of cost and benefits that we may have looked at in the past. We need to become experts in communicating the new higher levels of those type of analysis, narrow perception of the circular economy, ossified environmental permitting and regulation, yes. Working with the public sector and the regulatory sector is critical to the circular economy. It's critical to our energy transition. I don't know if I missed anything. Profitability. The issue, I think, there is there could be a loss of profitability for some. There could be opportunity for increased profitability for other new types of companies, which is a principle of capitalism, right? As things always change and businesses need to adapt. But it also might entail a longer term view of profitability rather than a quarter by quarter view. Well, thanks for those comments and continue to comment. I'll go ahead and move on. So you can sign on as a supporter of the climate change statement at this link. We appreciate ASABE's organizational support, but we are looking for individual support as well, and you will see that at this link. So there's two main reasons why the stakeholders of Engineering Change Lab believed that the drafting of the purpose statement was important. In general, people seek purpose in their work. Most of us have a strong desire to contribute positively to the world. We know that this is particularly important to younger generations. And so we hope this statement inspires those of us in the engineering community and those considering engineering to know that addressing climate change can be part of that purpose. And secondly, we're seeking to raise the bar on how engineering is contributing to climate change. So I want to wrap up this part of the discussion of environmentally responsible engineering by focusing on the aspect of leadership, which was part of the title for the presentation today, and the leadership skills that engineers will need in addressing climate change and other environmental challenges. And clearly, leadership requires far more than just technical knowledge. The major conclusions from our discussions are captured on this diagram. And we believe that effective leadership will come from a deep understanding of the systems that our work is part of, systems thinking that is grounded in strong personal values with respect to the environment. And those personal values that underlie leadership include that skill and importance to long-term thinking and community impacts, and really a deep appreciation for and learning from nature. Then the aspects of systems thinking that need to be learned and developed start with personal mastery, understanding our own values, our own drivers, our own vision, and reflecting on how we need to adapt, change, and advance personally. Leaders must then exhibit an openness to learning throughout your career, a commitment to ethical practice, effectiveness in communicating that starts with listening and developing the storytelling skills that are so important to effective communication. And then back to that idea of collaboration with other disciplines, with all stakeholders in the communities that we're working in. These are the skills that, combined with our technical expertise, will bring about greater contributions from the engineering community. So these first two issues that we have discussed today set up this next topic, the role of engineering education in driving higher levels of contribution from the engineering community. This was the topic of our most recent summit in March. The theme of that summit was that sustainability can be a driver of transformations in the engineering education system. So why should sustainability drive this transformation? Well, these are the points that were emphasized and that emerged in our summit. First, the massive impacts of the work of engineering. Just the fact that the projects, the things that we work on can last 50 to 100 years and sometimes even longer. The impacts of our work on the world are massive. Next, the values of engineering students and new students and new young people considering engineering. This is an imperative for our youth who are looking at the impacts of climate change on their lives. Then there's employer needs and responsibilities. The market for engineers and other professions with sustainability skills is growing. The academic community's role in preparing the next generation. The fact that 140,000 graduates per year are coming out of our US engineering programs. And it's all summarized by the last point, our responsibility in protecting the planet. In the summit, we featured several of the innovators and early adopters with respect to sustainability and engineering education. One of those organizations is the Lemelson Foundation through their Engineering for One Planet initiative. The vision for EOP is to transform engineering education such that sustainability becomes a core tenet of the profession. At our summit, we heard from Cindy Cooper, Program Manager for EOP. EOP is founded on the framework that's shown in the circular diagram on the slide. And again, at the core of that framework, you see that concept of systems thinking, understanding our interconnectedness. The framework includes student learning outcomes in areas of knowledge and understanding and skills, both leadership skills and technical skills. EOP is seeking to catalyze systemic change through the development of teaching tools, assessment tools, through financial support for curricular changes, and through an impact network of stakeholders from both inside and outside the educational system. I've been gratified to be part of that network over the last several years. I encourage you to learn more about EOP and its potential, particularly if you are an educator. Another innovator that we heard from was Alessandra Furzocco of Olin College of Engineering in Massachusetts. Olin is an innovator in many aspects of engineering education. Their model of teaching and learning engineering is based on an approach that's forward-thinking, project-based, and centered on collaboration between faculty and students. At the summit, Alessandra described her focus on impact-centered education, which she defines as an approach that links learning and activities to something that results in positive outcomes in the world. This approach allows students to learn the application of a core engineering principle, for instance, something like thermodynamics, to real-world projects like battery technology in a way that emphasizes sustainability and a deep understanding of the impacts of different types of projects on people and on the environment. Her projects often involve a third party from outside of education who brings problems and actual projects to the students. And the students learn to manage the real world ethical dilemmas that result when their values may not align with the third party partner's project. Our summit also included a panel of 3 engineering students who gave their perspective of how they experienced sustainability in their education. Well, this is clearly a very small sample, but here's some of the key points that we heard from the students. The fact that they are seeing the impact, that the impacts on people are the most important parts of engineering. That sustainability can help re-examine some of the old paradigms of engineering. One of the students who was studying for a PhD in chemical engineering cited the recent train derailment in Ohio. She was incredibly frustrated by why we are still using these toxic chemicals. Why haven't we developed more or less dangerous alternatives? We heard from 1 or 2 of the students that they had to seek out sustainable approaches through self-directed learning. It wasn't part of the courses. They see the importance of incorporating sustainability across the entire curriculum, not just focusing on 1 or 2 courses. They see sustainability as a mindset on how we should approach engineering. And from one student who had just started her career in a private sector firm, her learning to see the impact of her work and how sustainability can improve those outcomes that she is beginning to see. Michael Milligan of ABET was our kickoff speaker at the summit, and Michael completely changed my perspective on ABET. He highlighted the work that needs to be done to change the systems of engineering education and how these changes can help bring about increased contributions from the engineering community that are needed to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This was the key point he emphasized, that ABET accreditation is uniquely positioned to drive the knowledge, skills, and experiences of sustainability into undergraduate engineering education. He also stressed how ABET can be an advocate for shifts in the mindset of students, educators, and administrators. So here's the key takeaways from the participant discussions at our summit. In one exercise, we asked our participants to articulate a future vision of what engineering education could look like given a deeper integration of sustainability. And on the left-hand side of the slide are some of the elements of that future vision that we heard. De-siloing, greater collaboration among different departments in universities. Support from industry partners for this transformation. Faculty who have the tools and the support to teach differently, things they don't have now. Students experiencing deeper interactions with industry, and the engineering community unified in support of this transformation. In our second exercise, we asked our participants about the barriers and points of resistance. And here's some of the strategies that were articulated on the right-hand side. The need for proof points or demonstrations of how sustainability can be incorporated and how it contributed to career placement. Support for those early adopters who want to make these changes in curriculum. Support from university leadership and from industry advisory boards that I mentioned later on. Bringing students into the conversation so that changes that we make are driven by student input, industry involvement to support these changes, and the credibility that can come when change is supported by outside grants or, again, by those industry advisory boards. All right, so let me wrap up by summarizing our Engineering Change Lab discussion of the circular economy, which occurred at our 2022 Engineering Ideas Institute and was kicked off by Maury Salz's presentation on ASABE's Circular Biosystems Initiative. Our approach to this topic was based on the premises that those challenges we face in engineering that I started off with, including climate change, infrastructure, and social crises, are escalating at a pace at which a sustainable approach is not enough. This diagram illustrates the transition that is needed. While the last 25 years produced great progress from the conventional to sustainable practices, the next 25 years must bring a transformation from sustainable to regenerative practices. Our approach for the summit was to learn from the approach of ASABE and others in this area who are recognizing this needed transformation. One of the key elements in our discussion was the mindset shifts in engineering that are needed to accelerate the transition from sustainability to regeneration. But there were four of them that emerged. First, separate to connected. A quote from John Muir illustrates this concept. Here's the quote: "When we try to pick out anything by itself, we find it hitched to everything else in the universe." So the challenge for the engineering community is to move beyond our standard practice of breaking projects into tasks to also including reflection on the sum of the parts as an element of our work. Secondly, there's inert to living. We tend to view our organizations as things rather than as dynamic living systems. A living systems view imparts value to people and results in compassion for people, even when they make a mistake. As leaders, we must recognize the adage that change happens at the speed of trust and along the lines of relationships. Then there's short-term to long-term. I mentioned it earlier. Our work in engineering is generational in nature. What if we adopted the Native American 7 generations philosophy, that the decisions we make today should result in a sustainable world 7 generations into the future? And finally, there's closed systems to open systems. We often think in terms of closed systems, where the variables are all known and the systems are discrete. Regenerative approaches require a shift to thinking of our work as being part of open systems that are dynamic with expanding and changing variables. So these are the mindset shifts that are needed to move engineering to a circular economy approach to our work. And they're the same shifts, same type of shift that are needed to address the other challenges we face, both internal challenges in engineering, such as diversity, and external challenges, such as climate change, aging infrastructure, emerging technologies, and our role in creating equitable communities. So thank you again for the opportunity to talk about Engineering Change Lab and our work. We have a couple events coming up. I wanted to make sure I mentioned our next event is on June 20th. We will explore public policy leadership from the engineering community. Registration for that is available through our website. And in September, we will return to the Colorado Chautauqua in Boulder for the 2023 Engineering Ideas Institute. This year's Institute, we will use scenario planning to examine engineering's role in the future. We will hear from experts in important trends such as AI, diversity, resilience, as well as societal trends, demographic trends. Participants will then craft different scenarios of the future and explore how to use these scenarios to enhance our decision-making skills, recognize major shifts earlier, and set the agenda for strategies and actions that can increase our contributions. The Colorado Chautauqua in Boulder is a great venue for this type of discussion. So we welcome your participation in these events. I strongly believe in the mission we have taken on at Engineering Change Lab. I'm also very aware that we are a very small fish in a very big pond. But in these words of Margaret Mead, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. If you're interested in becoming engaged in our work, it's easy. We've got the QR code on the slide. which will enable you to join our mailing list. That will keep you up to date on our events and our work. There's no obligation, there's no membership fee, no cost at all, or you can just reach out directly to me. So thank you again to all of you for listening in today, and I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm here till the end of the hour to answer any questions that may have come up in the chat that we missed, or anything else that you might have. Thank you again.
Great. Thanks, Mike. Thanks for that presentation. You did have a couple more comments that came in after we had changed topics that were from the what barriers do we see to making changes? I don't know if you wanted to comment on any of those. One was from
Let me get to those. Which one did I miss, Alicia?
the two at the bottom. So one was unavoidable and significant upfront costs, at least for now. Small steps are generally accepted.
Yeah. Open to anybody's thoughts. Again, I think that first of all, that investments in R&D are critical to any advancements in the future, right? So I think different types of organizations are willing to make those R&D investments. And I would also come back to the answer that I gave earlier, and that's to developing skills around life cycle costing and life cycle cost benefit analysis, so that we make sure we're really doing a good job of accounting for those significant upfront costs. And I think that's the answer on pros and cons as well. Are we looking at the life cycle?
Mike, this is Maury.
Hello, Maury. Good to see you.
Good to see you. In your experience in the domain you guys are working in, do you see any standards development in the life cycle accounting domain? Is there anyone actually trying to formalize methodologies more crisply, more in a direction we can follow?
Well, that is what that's in terms of at the academic level. I know that is one of the principles in the Engineering for One Planet framework that I mentioned, that we've got to get that into academic curriculum. On the industry level, I have seen some things. Okay, here's one that I can think of, Maury. In the structural engineering field, there is a lot of work being done on the calculation of embedded carbon in building structures, and there's lots of software advances that have been done in that area. And they're the leaders that I can think of. There may be others.
Okay, I think that's an opportunity for us as a industry, is finding methods that everybody can kind of formulate to. I think we talk about life cycle analysis all the time, but how to bring it to life into a structure that these resistance people can accept would be favorable. So
there's another system that is called the Envision system. That's with an E. It's a system for it's a sustainability rating system for infrastructure, and it covers all kinds of infrastructure, all kinds. And it has embedded in its rating system life cycle costing as one of the criteria within their rating system. And in their guidance, they have lots of resources related to life cycle costing. So that's the Institute. I'll put it in the chat. It's the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure that has developed that system.
This is Brahm Verma. I have a question about the upcoming conference in September. Can you talk a little bit more about it as to, you mentioned it is going to be, the topic will be imagining the future. What is the structure and the nature of the conference normally? Can you share that?
Yeah, so we refer to this conference as our Engineering Ideas Institute. It's an in-person event. It's the event that Maury spoke at a year ago regarding CBS.
Yes.
So the format is like most of our events, Brahm. We will bring in thought leaders or speakers to address certain key elements of the future, not just in engineering, but in this case, we want to also look at societal trends. And so we will hear from the speakers, the thought leaders, but then as a group, we will have small group and large group exercises to create scenarios of the future. It's called scenario planning. It's a technique that has been developed, and our facilitator is experienced in this technique where you develop alternative scenarios and then you pick them apart as to what are the strategies, what can we learn from these scenarios that would cause us to do things differently, and that might be applicable across multiple scenarios. So it's a combination of hearing from speakers, thought leaders, and then group exercises.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great, thanks.
How many days do you meet?
2.5 days.
All right, great. Well, we're coming up on the top of the hour. So are there any last questions or comments out there before we wrap up?
My final plea is reach out to me. We love to expand our network, and you can engage as much as you want, but we invite you to join along in our exploration of the future.
All right, great. I think that was a good final comment there, Mike. So
okay.
I want to thank everyone today for your participation, and a special thanks to our speaker, Mike McMeekin, my co-moderator and ASABE Director of Membership, Sarah Rodriguez, as well as several others that helped make this member hour a reality. Our next webinar with a focus on circular systems will be in 2 weeks on Thursday, June 1st at 1 p.m. Eastern. We will have Georg Schermacher from EIT Food discussing innovations related to transforming our food systems. The sessions in this series will be available on YouTube via the ASABE CBS website. If you are interested in connecting with others and growing the circular bioeconomy systems movement, we hope that you will join us at the CBS Day event held in Omaha, Nebraska on July 9th. And you can find more details on ASABE's meeting registration page about that particular event. So again, I want to thank you for your time and your participation today, and we look forward to hosting you again in the future. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much, Mike.
Yes, thank you all.
Thank you.